the information about my co-presenter today is that Ozzie Rosenblum is the founder and CEO of RemSource Virtual Office Team. RemSource provides a US-based outsourced solution for administration services for business owners have time. There may be some audio interference. I don't know if others are hearing that, but I guess the presenters will mute themselves whenever they're not speaking. Ozzie has spent his entire professional life working in the small business space. He lives in Baltimore with his wife and 3 kids, which is also where RemSource team is located, and from which they provide support to businesses across the country and throughout the world. So welcome, Ozzie. Good to see you. I'm not hearing you. I don't know if you need to do something with the audio, but I hear some static, but not what you're saying. So I guess we can pipe in on that in a second. I'll start with my question and that I really wanted to get to with you, and then to the extent we can work out the audio issues, we'll go into that. Otherwise, maybe we'll do it afterwards if we're still having trouble on the audio side. So if I guess my question is that, when we're coming out of lockdown, I guess we can mute when we're not speaking because there's some audio interference. When people are coming out of lockdown, they are having to do more with less. Perhaps they had to let people go. Some people may have successfully pivoted, but they're underwater with everything they have to do, and the execution for their customers, for their clients is suffering. Or they can't effectively sell to the leads that they have. And hopefully if the technical issues are resolved, and listen, I know you're an expert on effective delegation, and with the new circumstances that everyone is in now, I guess my question is, what can people who are stuck in the hamster wheel now do to get out of it? We'll see if we can hear you. Ozzie, can you hear me? I think we lost Ozzie. So with that, I think what we're going to do is we're going to get into what I guess maybe some of the stuff that I was hoping to share about what to do in the new normal that we're living in now, and how to. Ozzie's back? Can we hear you? The perils of a virtual expo, it seems like.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Ozzie, did you hear my question before?
I did not, and I'm sorry to you and everybody. A little bit of platform issues, but if you don't mind repeating,
no problem. Yeah,
happy to.
I was just saying that everybody has to do more with less, and we're all dealing with a situation where maybe we pivoted and maybe things are going well, but we can't handle the work, especially with less people. Can't effectively service our clients, or we can't effectively, capitalize on the leads that we are getting, or maybe things are just harder and we have to do more with less, and we feel like we're running in the hamster wheel. I know you're an expert on delegation. If I'm running in the hamster wheel, like what can you tell me that I could, obviously, or all of us, that we can get value from right now to get out of that?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for taking the lead on the launch here for this session with me working out my tech issues. It's a great question. It's part of, I think, this entire experience for everyone has been sometimes taking a pause and saying, nobody has experienced this before. Nobody is an expert. We obviously live in a world with a rich history of all kinds of economic growths and downturns. Some challenges. This is not the first time in the history of humanity that people have been challenged. But this was so rapid, and this was so unique, and this was in a time and in an era where it took on its own unique experience that I think will be discussed for the ages. I think this is going to be in the history books. That one of the things that I have found that people have really needed to do is constantly remeasure. Leadership is typically a game of proactivity. It's about forecasting, it's about seeing, it's about measuring, and it's about controlling momentum. This was all about the pivot. And I'm starting to hate that word because it's just so overused, but it really was. It was about a certain amount of agility and ability to constantly remeasure. So that hamster wheel feeling that people are getting, the answer is you've got to step back again and look at what's going on. You have to reprioritize. You have to, like never before, decide what really needs to happen now for your business and for your clients and for your future, and what can wait. And things that would have been part of the day-to-day when productivity was what it used to be, unfortunately, it has to shift, and you got to start saying no to some things, and you got to start pushing some things off. Teams are doing their best, but it's not 4 months ago, and therefore delivery, turnaround time, operations, and expectations, both on the client side and on the provider side, all have to kind of be reformulated.
Well, I definitely hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. And so, yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that. And the truth is, I didn't introduce myself, so and I know Avi, you had a question for me.
Why don't I introduce you?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Be my pleasure. So for those of you that don't know Ben Wolfe, he helps business owners to get traction and focus and get what they want from their businesses, which, I'm going to interject and say is not always what happens in the entrepreneurial story. People start with a vision and a goal, but along the way, things become challenging. And the way that he helps them get that is using a simple set of tools called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is known as EOS. Ben has built most of the operations at healthcare startups, from pre-launch to becoming some of the largest organizations of their type in the New York State area, and I'm sure he'll describe that to us. He lives in the Woodmere area in New York, and previously practiced corporate restructuring and bankruptcy law at Kramer Levin, Naftalis, and Frankel. Sounds like a good group of Jewish boys in the New York City area. So Ben's a pro. He's been there. He's done it hands off. He's taken it out off the whiteboard and made it happen, and is mixing both science and practice to help people get what they want from their business owners, from their businesses. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, I guess to get into this topic, I guess what I want to first, and this is obviously reflecting a little bit of what Ozzie was talking about before, but the only thing that we know for sure is that's going to be now is uncertainty. Nobody knows what is going to happen. New York City entered phase 1 last week. Long Island, where I live, entered phase 2 last week. Different parts of the country are all entering different phases, some further along, some less advanced in the reopening. But the truth is that nobody knows whether the pivot that they just made or that they're about to make will take off or fall flat. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows where exactly the new markets are going to go, where things are going to shake out. And anybody who speaks with certainty about what the new normal is, and so when I have a topic that has the phrase new normal in it, I don't mean to imply that I know what that's going to be. But what I'm hoping to talk about is how to set yourself up with a system that will enable you to adapt to whatever the new normal is as it adapts and as it changes day by day. So anybody who says that they know what that's exactly going to look like is either fooling themselves or lying to themselves or to you. But here's what we do know. Here's what is certain. Regardless of the specifics of what happened and where the market shakes out and where your industry shakes out, which is that if you're loosey-goosey in your approach, quoting Mrs. Doubtfire, in your approach to cash, operations, or people you cannot rely on 100%, then it's not going to go well. It's also certain that if you want to run a tight operation, which is a necessity these days, even more than it was before when there was more to go around, you need to pick an operating system, quote unquote, for your business and stick with it. The one I've used, as Ozzie mentioned, for companies that I've built and for the clients that I have that use it, is EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And I use the phrase operating system based on the idea that just like a computer has an operating system that kind of runs the computer, and then there's a bunch of programs in the computer. There's in a business, there's sales, there's finance, there's operations, there's delivery of services or products to customers or clients. So those are the programs. That's Outlook and Word and Excel. But the operating system is Windows. That runs the whole computer, or Apple or whatever, iOS. And so you need to have an operating system that is going to get you where you want to get to. So I'll give a high level overview of EOS, again, Entrepreneurial Operating System today, and talk about how those tools are meant to be adapted to a black swan event like the one that we've been through for the last 3 months and the one that will be going through for many, many months in the future, as things find some sort of equilibrium and then adapt outward from there. And so I'm going to give a brief overview of that. And one of the things I want to just give a couple of preliminary things about that. One of them is that in adapting the tools of whatever operating system you use, or however it is that you run your business, there's a couple of principles that have to be kept in mind. One is that because things are changing so rapidly, things need to move faster. So if normally in normal circumstance, what we would call normal circumstances, you are reviewing your cash flow once a month, maybe that needs to be once a week now to make sure that you're not getting into a danger zone and that you're making cuts or adaptations, that you're not going to reach a cash crunch and not going to be able to pay your vendors or your people or whatever. If you had quarterly goals, and that's typically what you do, and that's what we do in EOS, you have quarterly goals that we call rocks. Maybe those need to be monthly goals, maybe bi-monthly goals, but they need to be more frequent so you can do the big things that you need to do to adapt to the ever-changing circumstances and then adapt again when those circumstances change again. And if you had weekly accountability meetings to see where everybody's doing, and that things are being executed properly, and maybe those weekly meetings need to be daily meetings, daily huddles. But everything just needs to be more frequent. So that was the first preliminary remark I made before I introduced, the EOS model. The second thing I wanted to say is that some people participating in this session right now may be solopreneurs or have just one or two people in their business. So I'm going to be using language when I talk about EOS that's going to kind of presume that there's a leadership team or there are multiple people or teams in the company. And so I just want you to have in mind, if you have a smaller business like I do with Wolfe's Edge Consulting, or again, helping companies, execute on their businesses better. But my business is kind of 1.5 people. It's me and an assistant. So it's very, very much similar to my own business to a solopreneurship. And I use EOS. I use these same tools in this. So I will just ask you, if you have a solopreneur or a small business with just a couple of people in it, I would ask you to have in mind when we describe the system to say, how would that apply to me in my situation with my type of company? And so I would encourage you to do that. And obviously people can look at my website, wolfsedgeconsulting.com. That's Wolf's with an S, wolfsedgeconsulting.com, and be in touch with me if there's any questions about this afterwards. I'm happy to answer any questions about how it would apply to a solopreneurship or whatnot. But it's something that I adapt to my business as well, and I find very effective in using the tools that I'm going to describe in a second. So with that, I just want to say that if there's one thing that I hope people will get out of this part of the conversation, it's that to execute successfully, again, you've got to pick an operating system, quote unquote, for your business that will get you clear on who you are, what your culture is all about, what your real values are, where exactly you want your business to go, and how you want to get there. And then it should give you tools that is going to get you the traction to actually execute on that vision with discipline and accountability. And if you do that, and you execute on that operating system, then you will succeed and you will achieve your dream. And actually, Ozzie's comment reminded me that I have a poll that I'm going to launch now for everybody to answer here, to give us an idea of what the main thing is that's on your mind, and maybe we can address that once we see the results. We can answer that. I would also encourage people, for both Ozzie and myself, to put your questions in the chat box, and if there are questions there before the end, then we will try to get to them at the end. So with that, I'm going to share my screen for a minute, and with that, I'm going to share my screen for a minute and show you guys and gals something, which is this EOS model. So basically what I would say is that the EOS model is based on the idea that you in your business of whatever size and whatever industry are dealing with 134 things all the time that you're wrestling with and juggling and putting out fires and whatnot. And and what we find is that really your business breaks down into 6 key components, which are represented by the 6 segments of this diagram in the EOS model that you see in the screen share. And what we find that if you can get strong, which we measure on a scale of 0% to 100% strong, if you can get what you consider to be strong, or at least 80% strong in each of those 6 key components, then most of those 134 issues are going to fall away, because you find that they are actually symptoms of weakness in one of these 6 key components. And when I describe each component, I'm going to say a couple of words about a tool that you guys can use that's going to be of immediate value for you just from listening to this session, that you could use and bring into your business to be able to strengthen those 6 key components. And so with that, I'd like to start with the vision component, which is the vision component basically means that you're able to answer the question of, like, again, who are you? What are your core values? What does it mean for somebody to be a cultural fit with your organization, with your company? Are you kind of like beast mode all the time? Is it kind of like that you're in beast mode all the time, or it's, family first, or like pitching in or staying in your lane and out of others? But what is it that, like, if you would say that whoever the best person is in your organization that you love, and if you, not you, the owner, but somebody else, if you could clone them 100 times, that you could just take over the world, what are the qualities that make you value them so much and make them such an amazing part of your team? Well, then those are probably your core values. And by getting clear on what that is, you clarify who you are. And also answering questions. What we see here in the vision component is what we see here in the vision component is answering 8 questions. And these 8 questions I'll go through briefly on this document here, which we call the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. And again, if anybody gets in touch with me at wolfsedgeconsulting.com, you can contact me through the website, and I'll email you a PDF or a Word version of this document so that you could fill it out for your own business. But here's some examples of core values that I just discussed. The second of the 8 questions is, what's your core focus? Is getting clear on what are you best at? What's your sweet spot that you are better at than anybody else in the world? And that, yes, you could do a lot more stuff, but what is it that you're best at, that you get the best bang for your buck in your sales and marketing resources? And instead of being a jack of all trades, if you focus your core focus and not try to do everything, then you'll be much, much, much more successful than you would if you were, again, trying to be all things to all people. I know somebody who had a law firm where he was, half the practice was litigation and he's running EOS, and half the practice was transactional in his field, which was franchising, or is franchising. And he actually said that, what they're best at, what they enjoy the most is the transactional part. They don't really like the litigation part. So they got out of the litigation business, even though it was 50% of their revenue before that, which is a scary, scary leap to do. And what they found was that at the end of 1 year, they were 150% of the number of clients they had before, and I believe 125% of the revenue of what they were before, even though they gave up the line of business that was 50% of the revenue before that. And that was because they focused on what they were best at in the world because of their, using these EOS tools. And then they went to the moon. They were much more successful and much happier and enjoying what they did as well. So that's the next thing, which is core focus. The next one is 10-year target, just getting clear on getting everybody on the same page about, hey, where are we going with this? Could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but everybody's different of where they want to set that goal. But where is it that you want to see yourself? Get clear on that, paint a picture, And because to the extent that everybody's rowing in the same direction, they have something excited about, besides just the checklist of the day-to-day, which is what so many of us and our people just focus on. Okay, what needs to get done today? But if everybody's focused on, hey, where is this supposed to get to? Then they can achieve much better where you want to get to. And again, that's one of those things actually which may need to hold in abeyance for now, because we don't know what the immediate future is like, but we can still know what the long-term future is like, regardless of the immediate present. So the next thing is a 3-year picture, painting a picture of where things want to look like in just 3 short years from now in order to feel like you're on track to get to your 10-year target. And is identifying the marketing strategy, which is critically important. There are people here talking about marketing, and there's definitely huge experts in that field that you should be listening to at this expo. And in the marketing strategy field, from EOS, we take it from a higher level perspective, not a marketing specialist perspective, and that's identifying your target market. What is the demographic, geographic, and psychographic profile of your ideal client, the people who your message resonates with the most? That is used, clarifying that information is used as a filter. If I'm thinking about doing something in marketing, it may sound like a cool idea, but is that once I identify my target market, I could always ask that filtering question. Is that where my target market people are? Is that where to find them? What's bothering them that I can help with? And am I addressing that in my marketing materials? So it's a filter with all of your marketing and sales decisions. The next thing is your 3 uniques. It's identifying what 3 things make you different from everybody else in the world. And when I say 3 uniques, it's the combination of those 3 things that sets you apart. 3 things that you're the best at. Now, one of those things, maybe most people in your industry, most of your competitors will have one of those things. 2 of those things together in combination, maybe only a handful will have. But all 3 together in that unique combination, nobody else will have except you. And that is what makes the content of your message all of your marketing. Whether, again, it's your marketing, whether it's digital, print, whatever kind of marketing it is, are you hitting those 3 uniques in all of your marketing materials and your message? If I'm doing sales, if I have salespeople, am I hitting this message in every sales call and every demo and every pitch call, whatever it is? Am I using this in my sales process? And even with my current customers, am I always selling to my current customers and my current clients, and make sure that I'm emphasizing this to them so that they'll want to continue working with me? So that is the marketing strategy. There's also proven process, which is a document that can show graphically what the customer journey is going to look like, that they're going to have from the time they first contact you in whatever method that is until they're a long time satisfied client or customer. That's the proven process. And when you have a simple graphical description of that proven process, it makes people feel more comfortable. Like, oh, you've thought this out. You're not just doing it ad hoc with all of your clients or customers, but this is something you've thought through. It's a proven process. It works with lots of people, and that's the message that it sends when you have a proven process. And a guarantee is some pledge or promise that takes whatever to be the greatest hesitation that is in the minds of your clients or customers, or people you want to be your clients or customers, or people that you want to be your clients or customers. What's the biggest thing that's holding them back? And then make some pledge or promise that can reduce that fear and increase the chances of the sale. And so I would want to then talk about the next 3 of the 8 questions, which is, where do you need to be 1 year from now? What are your revenue, your profit, your measurables? What are the main goals that you need to have achieved by the end of the year in order to feel that you are on track for your 3-year target and for your 10-year target, or whatever number that longer term target is? That's your 1-year plan. And we say that there's 3 to 7 goals for the year, even though you may want to put 27 goals for the year. When you have 27 goals for the year, really you have no goals for the year, because it's impossible to truly focus on that many things. And you're going to find frustration is what you're going to find. The next piece is when you really get down to traction, when you really get down to where the rubber hits the road, and that is the rocks question, which is this quarter. If I want to be where I want to get at the end of the year, what do I need to have done by this quarter in order to be on track for that? And again, that's just 3 to 7. That's just 3 to 7 goals. And we're going to talk later about how we create accountability around working on a weekly basis towards achieving those goals. But that's the critical question to answer is, what do we need to get done this quarter? And as I mentioned at the beginning, at a time like now, depending on what you're going through of great transition and great change, then you may need to have not quarterly rocks, but you may need to have monthly rocks or bi-monthly rocks. And then checking on that on a daily basis or a twice weekly basis or whatever it is. But you may need to adapt these type of tools to make sure that you're executing fast enough to survive and hopefully to thrive and overcome the challenges and the uncertainty of the current environment. And the last thing is the issues list. You've got a million issues and ideas and opportunities that are like flying into your head all the time, or that come up in the course of day-to-day operations. So you need to have a place, a catharsis to put those issues where you don't have to act on them right away. The tendency is just to want to act on it. If you have an idea or there's a problem, well, there's two tendencies. One is to like either sweep it under the rug and say, I can't, and just sweep it under the rug and not deal with it. Or there's a tendency to want to act on it immediately and then give you or your company or your ability to execute complete whiplash, going from one idea to the next, never finishing executing any one of them. So the way we handle that is we agree on what the quarterly priorities are, or more frequently if you need to, and then we add anything else, any other issues, to the issues list, the long-term issues list, ideas, opportunities. I think that there is a comment here that this document here, this vision, what I call the vision, or what EOS calls the Vision Traction Organizer, or as its friends say, the VTO for short. This VTO is something that I could share. I don't know if the expo has a way of me sharing that with everybody automatically, but please go to wolfsedgeconsulting.com, WOLFS, wolfsedgeconsulting.com, in response to somebody's question. Go to my website. There's a contact us page. I will email you a PDF and or a Word version of this, and then you could fill it out. And I see that Ozzie put my email in there. So just you can email me directly, and I will send you a copy of this document to fill out. So thank you, Ozzie, for doing that.
Hey, you got to be a good backup guy right here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I feel like I'm going too slow because we need to end by 11:55, so everybody has time to get to their next session. So I'm going to really kind of get moving on this, which is which is the vision component. The next thing is that, okay, when you get clear on who you are, where you want to go, how you want to get there, the next thing is getting that shared by all. That means sharing with your people. It can't just be something that exists in your head or like your private owner's box or CEO's box, but it has to be something that you actually share with people, because it can't catalyze action and desires and efforts unless it's actually shared with people. So having a state of the company address periodically, sharing this information, calling out core values, wins, is great stuff to be doing to make sure that these are shared by all. I see there's some comments about EOS in the chat, which we'll get to in a few minutes. And so moving on to vision. So when you're clear on vision, you really can't execute on vision without the right people. So without being strong in the people component, and being strong in the people component means having the right people in the right seats. This is one thing I alluded to earlier when I was talking about people you can't 100% rely on, that's just not going to work. And having people you can rely on means two things. It means having the right people, which means having people that match your core values, fit your culture like a glove, fit you as the owner like a glove. And the second thing is that they're in the right seats, meaning that they GWC, they get, want, and have the capacity to do whatever their substantive job is. And if they can't do that successfully, you give them support, and they can't execute effectively, then they may be the right person. They may be a great person. They may be your sister, brother-in-law. And obviously that's a whole another can of worms, how to handle those situations when it's family members that are not the right people in the company, or close friends. But that is an issue. And if you're in a for-profit business, I would just urge you that if you have one of the two types of people issues, which are, to take action. And those two types of issues are right people, but not right seat, meaning it's a right person, but they are not able to execute effectively. They're not able to do so reliably. You always have to recheck everything they do. You can't get comfortable. It's not scalable. It's not going to work. It reduces the morale of other people in the company when somebody is not pulling their share, and you have to create all kinds of right hand scratching the left ear types of processes to counteract people's weaknesses in their ability to do their job, and that's just not going to work if you have a for-profit business, even if there's family or personal reasons why you want to keep that person around. It's ultimately going to hurt you in the long term, so I urge you to make a change.
You know, what's interesting about that, Ben, is that in every case that I've seen it finally get resolved, there's equal relief on the employee side. That same sense of loyalty that the business owner is feeling, that, oh, I can't make a move on this person because of X, Y, or Z, is the same reason that person is not speaking up about being misaligned with the position. And there's this like immediate, like, thank you, you know, yes, I'm in the wrong position, or yes, I'll go find something else. You know, everyone's kind of like sticking to loyalty and totally getting off track.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. And very often people, you know, they may have a secret relief, you know, to, you know, and even if they have to leave, you know, but if they're not executing effectively, they're probably not really happy either. And so they'll be able to be happier. They may go through a period of difficulty. It's going to be hard in the short term, but it's going to be hard in the short term. But in the long term, it's going to be better off for that person and for yourself. So the other type of people issue is we have that you have the wrong person, right seat, which means somebody who's really good at their job. Maybe they're like a top salesperson, but they're backstabbing other people, or they just don't work well with you, and they're just not a good cultural fit. And again, that's going to be poison over the long term. And just urge you to make a change. And those are really hard too, in a different way, because you know they bring in so much revenue, or they're so productive, they do so much, but you know sometimes it takes months to prepare to make a move like that. Sometimes you have to hire one or two people and get them trained before you can make that move, so that you'll be able to do so without suffering the loss of that person, and it won't be devastating to your business. But it's critical. If you have the right people in the right seats and you're all aligned on the vision, then you're going to do great things. And the third segment here of the model in the top right corner, which is your data component. You have to be reviewing data on a weekly basis that is giving you real-time ideas, leading indicator data. When I say data, I'm talking not just about financial data, which is usually backward-looking, and it's kind of like, well, it's too late to do anything about that, but forward-looking data. Like if I know this past 7 days, how many sales calls were made, how many demos were done, and if I could say like, okay, how many leads came in, how many widgets were produced, what was the quality rating this past week on the widgets that were produced, or on the service deliveries, or the services that were rendered on a delivery type of service. This is every kind of business. Whatever those data points are, they're going to be a leading indicator of where you're going to go in the future. Because if you're not delivering service with enough quantity or quality, that's going to affect your ability to keep those clients and those customers, or to have them give you referrals. If you're not getting enough sales, you have to know how many leads coming in you need to get, you know, based on whatever your conversion rate is. You have to know what your conversion rate is, or figure that out. And, you know, that's a leading indicator of where your sales are going to be next month, the month after that, or 2 years from now, depending on how long your sales cycle is. But those are going to be the leading indicators that are telling you whether you're on or off track. So reviewing your data every week and seeing whether you're on or off track to reaching your quarterly goal, your yearly goal, your 3-year, your 10-year, and seeing where you are, if you're on track or off track. And then immediately what you're going to find is that if you have the right people that you can count on and who are able to execute at their jobs effectively on a regular basis, and you're all together aligned on where you want this to go, and you're all reviewing data on a regular basis, on a weekly basis at least, that is telling you whether you're on or off track towards achieving those goals, then you are going to constantly find problems. You're going to constantly find issues, which is where we get to the bottom left-hand component, which is that these issues are always going to come up. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, you have the choice we have 15 minutes left, so you have the choice on a time check to, you have a choice between putting those issues under the rug, and shoving them under the rug, wrapping them up in duct tape and just not dealing with it, which again, if you're underwater and there's always fires going on, that can be very tempting. Or there is, or there's a tendency, well, the truth is that's what people are mostly doing, is they're just putting things under the rug. So if a company is going to be successful, they have to be good. Their success is going to be in proportion to their ability to solve issues effectively. So the tool that I teach people, in which they use at their weekly meeting, that weekly meeting is referenced at the bottom of the model where it says meetings. that weekly meeting, they're doing a process called, where everyone's creating an issues list. That means that no matter who it is, from whatever you consider the bottommost person to the topmost person, whenever anybody spots an issue, or when you're going over your data and you spot issues, or you realize, hey, this quarterly goal that we're working on is off track, or we're not quite on track for that, what's getting in the way, is it goes right away on the issues list. And everybody gets in the habit that there is an issues list to put this on. It's not, you don't have to keep it on the front of your mind, and it's not going to get forgotten about. If you put it on the issues list, it will get addressed in the proper time if you have a process for solving issues on a regular basis. And that process is that IDS initials there in that bottom left-hand quadrant, which stands for identify, discuss, solve. So this is the discipline that I teach people to use in their weekly meetings, is to IDS their issues. Identify, discuss, solve. Identify means don't just jump to the solution. Don't just say like, oh, sales are down. Well, let's work on the salespeople, or let's work on the salesperson. Let's get another incentive, or another training, or another, or a disciplinary action, or whatever. Like, how do we even know that the salespeople are why sales is low? Maybe the salespeople are making fewer sales because they're getting junk leads and unqualified leads because of a marketing issue. Maybe you as the owner are in charge of marketing, or somebody else is in charge of marketing, and you should be dealing with a marketing issue. Maybe more information is needed to know what the underlying issue is. So the solution to this issue may not have to do with sales. It may have to do with investigating or looking at data and then coming back the next week and addressing it then. But the point is that you have to identify the root cause of the issue, because very often the issue that's brought up is only a symptom rather than the underlying cause of the problem. The next point is discuss, which means everybody in the room, whoever that is, discusses the issue and says their point once. Saying their point more than once, we say, is politicking. Everybody says their point once. Once it starts to get repetitive, that's the signal, that's the trigger that we need to move on to the discussion phase. Okay, what are the one or multiple potential solutions that we have? What does a solution look like? That means that you take somebody in the room and you say, okay, what is something that could be done within the next 7 days that is an action item towards the solution to this issue? So if the solution is, is that, let's say that example I gave before, sales are low. Well, is it because of marketing, or is it because of sales? So maybe the to-do is that somebody in the room is going to go get certain data and deliver that by the time of the next meeting. But something that could be done within 7 days, so that we can create accountability at the next meeting of, was my to-do done or not done? And then once I set that to-do, I mark the issue as solved and move on to the next issue. And I'll speak a drop more about that when I get into the meeting component. But the next thing is, so that's issues component. To the extent that you're going to be good at lining up and solving issues at the root, because you identify what they are at the root first, and then solving them, and then creating accountability on that weekly discipline of ensuring whether people's to-dos from the previous week, which had to be done within 7 days, are done or not done. Then you're gonna be knocking out your issues. You're gonna find that every week you're gonna be knocking out 3 issues, sometimes 6, sometimes 9, sometimes there'll be one big hairy issue. That's all you're working on for one day, and that could be a very effective meeting. So that's the issues component. I would just say one other thing about that, which is that sometimes the solution is something that takes multiple weeks. It can't be done within 7 days. So the way you handle that and still create accountability at the next week is that you break down and say, okay, well, what's the first step of that solution that can be done within the next week? And then you make the person accountable to report on that for the following week. And then just based on their own accountability towards our job, they're going to continue, obviously, after that with whatever the subsequent steps are. But that's how you would handle that. The next key component of the business to get strong on is your process component. And I would say, along with people issues, process issues are the next biggest areas of weakness that cause the most trouble for people, which is having unreliable processes, everybody doing things ad hoc in their own way every time. It's always different. And I know Ozzie here also. I know he assists people with creating workflows, and if to the extent you're using his company, or he helps with consulting services as well. So we can help you in kind of identifying what are your processes, making that line up. And there's 2 elements to the process component I would say here, which is that they have to be documented and they have to be followed by all. So documented means, again, it can't just be in your head and something that everybody's trained on, but it has to be clear. And the approach we take, and I teach people with process documentation, is just to take an 80-20 approach. You take the 20% of the steps involved in the process They get you 80% of the results, most of the results for that process, and you just document those 20% of the steps. Because if you go beyond that and you try to get down to every little detail, then what's going to happen is you end up with a 700-page, SOP manual that is just going to sit on the shelf gathering dust and no one's going to use. So these are like 2 to 5 page max process documents that make it clear what's the right way, what's the best way, what's the best practice for this core process. Core processes are things like what's your sales process, what's your marketing process. In your operations processes, there may be 1, 2, or 3 processes of how you deliver the service to your clients or customers, how you create your product and deliver your product to your clients or customers. And then there could be a finance process, how you collect and track the money that's going into your organization and pay your bills. Maybe an admin process for some, administrative or internal things, an HR process of how you onboard and hire and train and offboard employees. So you take those 6 to 10 core processes, document them in those 80-20, just 20% of the steps that get you 80% of the result, high level entrepreneurial type process documentation. And then the next step is ensuring that you have a system set up that those processes that you've set up are followed by all, that they are actually being followed, because they're not much good if people are not being measured and managed, and that there's data in their department, or that there's data at the company level, which is tracking how well they're actually executing on the process that was set up. So that is the process component. And I'll just tell you, business is so much more fun when you have good processes. I mean, it's a lot of work on the front end to set it up, but there's so much stress that you're dealing with all the time by having unreliable processes that are just, you have to look over things, or have everybody look, have 2 people look over everything that somebody else is doing. It's just stressful. It's not scalable. It's not fun. You start to dread having new clients. Sometimes, I mean, not everybody has this issue, but you sometimes dread, I can't handle anybody else. I can't do any more marketing because I don't have a good process. I can't handle it. I'm already working 80 hours a week. So having good processes, it's a lot of work up front, but once you get going and people get back, people get back, or they get into good habits, or sometimes get rid of people who don't have the GWC, don't have the get it, want it capacity to follow those processes. But once you get past that pain at the beginning, it's so much more fun, so much more scalable, and so much more profitable. So that's what I would say about processes. And the last thing is traction. At the bottom of the wheel that you see in front of you is the traction component, which is this idea that where even good companies and talented people fail, or they don't reach their potential, is in their traction, their execution, which is where I get to. I'll just see here, which is where I get to the. I'm going to end that poll and release that. But what you get to in the traction component, I'm just going to get to another piece of the agenda here on the screen, which is what do you do to get traction? So first of all, you have rocks, which we talked about earlier in the 8 questions in the vision component, which is and they're called rocks based on an analogy by Stephen Covey from one of his books, where he talks about how the only way you could fit sand and water and pebbles and rocks into a jar is by first putting in the rocks, and then the pebbles, and then the sand and the water. Then you can get it all in. But if you don't put the rocks in first, the big things, the things that are important but not necessarily urgent, then you're not going to get where you want to go, because the pebbles and the sand and the water, those day-to-day fires that come up and the day-to-day tasks that have to get done, you're never going to have time, or you're never going to be able to make time for the rocks unless you set those in first. You create blocks of time and you focus on a regular basis on achieving those rocks, and then fit in the fires and the day-to-day responsibilities in between that. That's where you're able to execute effectively. And so that's one component. The next thing is meetings. And here's what we call the level 10 meeting agenda. Because most people, when you ask them, or you ask the people, is that what's the rating that you would give to the effectiveness of your internal meetings? And most of the time people say that they would give them a 2, a 3, a 4. It's painful. It takes over, sometimes people hate meetings. It takes over their life. They go these 3 or 4 hour monster sprawling meetings, or they don't have enough meetings and people don't know what anybody else is doing, all living in silos. So our goal is to teach people a tool of how to have effective meetings. So I'm sharing with you guys now this tool called the Level 10 meeting, which you could also just Google or go to my website, find out more information about that. And the agenda here is that you agenda into the meeting by sharing some good news, personal and professional. You go over your scorecard. Again, that's weekly, or maybe if you're doing this on a daily basis, you do this at a daily huddle. Now at a time of crisis and great change, and you review your data. Okay, we have a minimum for each data point that we're reviewing on a weekly basis. Our sales, our pitches, the quality of our product last week, number of widgets produced, whatever it is, all that stuff that's activity-based numbers. Are we on track this past week with our numbers? And if we're not, we use the phrase, we drop it down to the issues list for that meeting. We don't address it, no excuses, no alibis. We just drop it down to be addressed as an issue. And the reason why it's important not to just get into whole big discussions every time you look at a number is because it usurps your ability to actually prioritize your time as a leadership team or as a departmental team. It hijacks your ability to prioritize. So we'll get to that in a second. But the next thing is rock review. And everybody, however many people there are, and if there's one of you, I would just say also, like a solopreneurship for myself, I have a coach that I use, and I do my level 10 meetings with my coach. That's how I do it as a solopreneur, so that I'm not talking to myself when I do a level 10 meeting. Or you could pick a friend or maybe another entrepreneur, and you could have your level 10 meetings together and hold each other accountable for your data and whatever. If you're two solopreneurs, that's an idea of how to do that. So rock review, just again, quickly, simply saying, on track or off track? Am I on track? Am I taking the actions to finish this by the end of the quarter or the month or whatever my time period is for this this quarterly goal? On track or off track? If I'm off track, we drop down the issue to be addressed. Okay, what can we do? Why are we off track? How can we get back on track? The next thing is customer employee headlines. Any big goofs with customers, any big events going on, babies born, whatever with employees, deaths in the family. Just things that we need to know to smoke out, potential issues, things that went wrong that might be indicative of a problem that we need to address, and then adding that to the issues list. And we're going to be wrapping up in a second. And things, customer employee headlines, a to-do list. Again, just saying done or not done on all of the previous week's to-dos. Where on our issue solving last week, 80% or more, actually 90% or more of your to-dos should be to done. That's the goal. And the last thing is IDS. This is the bulk of the meeting. Spent on issue solving. Spend 30 seconds prioritizing the issues. That way you could be strategic about what you're spending your time on, and not just whatever came up in the earlier part of the meeting just ends up engulfing the entire meeting. But you can actually be strategic on how you spend your time. And then it's critical to start on time and end on time. And I really want to emphasize end on time, because people are going to dread this. It's not going to be effective. You may think, hey, we can get more done, but it's just the evil inclination that's tempting you to have a longer meeting. And so that is the meeting component. That is getting clear on that. And then the last thing I would say, just to conclude, is, again, people have questions about any of this, you can put it in the chat. You can ask me afterwards by email. Ozzie included the email in the chat. You can go to my website, wolfsedgeconsulting.com, ask a question. Happy to have a conversation. But to execute effectively, the goal is to pick an operating system that your business can work on, a set of tools where you guys can get clear on who you are, where you want to go, how you want to get there, and then get the traction on that vision so you can execute on it with discipline and accountability. And again, if you do that, you will achieve your dream. As Winston Churchill said, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that accounts. So keep with the courage, keep executing. And, I think we have 2 more minutes. If there's any questions to come up, I'll look in the chat now. And Ozzie and I can address any questions in the last 1 or 2 minutes that we have. But thank you all for joining, and definitely be in touch with any questions.
That was great. Great overview, Ben. Appreciate it. I would just add, my experience has been working with a lot of solos and emerging small businesses. And, I think that perhaps if within the group, a little quiet group, so speak up, guys, we don't have a lot of time. Within the group, if there are, emerging, growing businesses, you might be saying to yourself, well, this structure seems like really large. Ben pointed out a few times, he is a borderline solo business himself. This structure, we see people when they're just like coming out of overwhelm, and operating in chaos, and they come to us for the first time for the process slice of that wheel. And they spend so much time redeciding things they've decided dozens of times, operating actually in a structure that they've never actually even articulated. And when you talk about resilience, which is today's topic, being able to navigate the kind of changes that we just experienced when you're already in chaos, that is a challenge. When you have structure to lean on, of course it has to change, and of course you have to reevaluate. And Ben has pointed out, along the way, change your meeting schedules, change your timelines, your evaluation points. But if you're starting with chaos and all these things that are really already in place aren't clear enough to you, you can't manage them. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, and you just don't have the tools to pivot and survive and really adapt to the conditions. So, I love this. My biggest message to add to all the great information that Ben provided is, don't think you're too small for this. This is the time to implement these things when you're small, if you're just emerging, because that's what gives you a real foundation to build on. If you wait until you have 15 employees and you start trying to do this, you're going to do it in a much more expensive and difficult way, and lose a lot of opportunity along the way. So now, even by yourself, structure is the key to growth. Structure is the key to sales. Structure is the key to customer service.
Yeah, thank you, Ozzie. And obviously, people can reach out to him and RemSource with regard to, if they need any administrative support, process support, consulting with process, or accounting and bookkeeping. Be in touch with me if there's any questions. And we are out of time, so we're going to end the broadcast now. But thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. I see we had over 30 people joining this breakout session. So if it was real life, it would have been a nice crowded room. Yeah. And look forward to getting back to normal with everybody and execute well. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Virtual high fives. Have a good day, everyone.